The 80s weren't just about chart toppers talking about the hidden gems that vanished without a trace. These bands had the sound, the style, and sometimes even the hits, but not the staying power. Ready to rediscover the forgotten voices of a legendary decade? Animotion. Animotion carved their niche within the mid-80s new wave landscape, yet their most significant hit track possessed origins elsewhere. The pulsating synth-pop juggernaut Obsession, a staple of the airwaves, was penned initially by Michael Desbars and Holly Knight. However, once Animotion adopted the song, they meticulously reshaped it into an emblematic anthem representing the decade. Emerging in 1983 from the creative embers of a science fiction-themed outfit named Red Zone, this Los Angeles collective rapidly found its rhythm amidst the expanding synth-pop phenomenon. Their charged interpretation of Obsession ascended the charts dramatically, achieving the number 6 position on the US Billboard Hot 100 and peaking at number 5 across the UK by 1985. Capitalizing on this surge, they released Let Him Go, which similarly secured placement within the US Top 40 rankings. Nevertheless, just as their prominence intensified, internal discord prompted substantial lineup alterations. By the time their third album surfaced, merely 2 original members were still involved, and although their 1989 single Room to Move garnered some radio play, it proved insufficient to sustain the band's trajectory. Following years of separation, Animotion delighted followers with a reunion performance in 2001, playing to a capacity crowd in Portland, Oregon. 20 Flight Rockers. During the mid-1980s, a period largely defined by pop, synthesized sounds, and flamboyant hair metal, a specific band embarked on a mission to resurrect the untamed spirit of foundational rock and roll. Meet 20 Flight Rockers, a London-formed ensemble whose moniker paid homage to Eddie Cochran's 1957 classic, 20 Flight Rock. Established in 1985, their core objective was to channel the defiant energy of 1950s rock into the contemporary era, infusing it with a distinct punk rock sensibility that differentiated them sharply from their musical peers. Guided by the compelling presence of frontman Gary Twin, alongside Mark Laff managing the drums, Ian McKillop handling guitar duties, and Jeff Vine anchoring the bass, their musical output masterfully blended vintage rockabilly guitar patterns with punk's raw attitude and drive, forging a sound simultaneously nostalgic and strikingly modern. They successfully cultivated a dedicated underground following, their electrifying live performances establishing them as an essential act to witness. Yet, despite this burgeoning fan base, widespread mainstream recognition persistently eluded them. The group independently produced an album titled Ride, intended for a 1988 release. Unfortunately, complications with their record label prevented its distribution, delivering a decisive setback to the band's momentum. Lacking a significant breakthrough, 20 Flight Rockers ultimately dissolved, marking them as one of the numerous undiscovered treasures within the annals of 80s rock music history. Club Nouveau. Were you aware that a major R&B crossover sensation of the 1980s originated directly from a band's dissolution? Club Nouveau rose phoenix-like from the dissolution of the Timex Social Club, illustrating how conclusions can often pave the way for fresh starts. Following the disbandment of the Timex Social Club, record producer J. King identified a chance for reinvention. In 1986, he established Club Nouveau in Sacramento, California, selecting a name that translates from French as New Club, explicitly signifying renewal. Their inaugural album, Life, Love and Pain, achieved immediate acclaim, propelled significantly by their vibrant, go-go rhythm-infused rendition of Bill Withers' timeless track Lean on Me. This interpretation deeply connected with listeners, ascending to the coveted #1 position on the Billboard Hot 100 chart during 1987. Tracks such as Jealousy and Why You Treat Me So Bad also gained considerable notice, with the latter evolving into a frequently sampled piece within the hip-hop and R&B genre's most iconically featured in Lunai's hit, I Got 5 on It. Notwithstanding their initial chart supremacy, Club Nouveau encountered internal reconfigurations, and their subsequent album releases struggled to recapture the initial enchantment. Although their mainstream visibility diminished, their lasting impact, especially through hip-hop sampling culture, has ensured their legacy endures. The Outfield. Envision a musical act hailing from Britain that dominated American radio charts, while remaining relatively obscure within their native land. This portrays the distinctive narrative of the Outfield, a London-based trio that achieved enormous success across the Atlantic, yet found widespread recognition challenging back home. Established in 1984, the band comprised vocalist and bassist Tony Lewis, guitarist John Spinks, and drummer Alan Jackman. Their signature sound, a compelling fusion of stadium rock dynamism and polished pop hooks, proved exceptionally successful with their 1985 debut album, Play Deep. The record's standout single, Your Love, swiftly attained classic status, climbing to #6 on the Billboard Hot 100 and embedding itself firmly within the fabric of American popular culture. From pervasive radio airplay to echoing through sports arenas, the track's instantly recognizable opening guitar riff and sentimentally charged lyrics solidified it as an anthem characteristic of the period. Despite this significant American acclaim, the band never attained a comparable level of renown within the United Kingdom. Their 1987 follow-up album, Bangin', did yield the top 40 hit Since You've Been Gone, yet they were unable to fully replicate their earlier phenomenal success. They persisted in creating music well into the 1990s, although their forward impetus gradually diminished. Tragedy befell the group in 2014 when John Spinks succumbed to liver cancer, prompting the band's formal dissolution. Tony Lewis subsequently launched a solo venture, releasing an album in 2018, but sadly passed away in 2020, signifying the conclusion of the Outfield's extraordinary journey. Kajagoogoo. Have you ever pondered how a group bearing a nonsensical moniker ascended to become a premier pop phenomenon of the early 1980s? This encapsulates the trajectory of Kajagoogoo, the ensemble responsible for the monumental 1983 hit Too Shy. Initially formed in Leighton Buzzard, England, back in 1978 under the name Art Nouveau, the band explored a blend of new wave aesthetics and synth-pop elements. Their pivotal moment arrived, however, only after they rebranded themselves as Kajagoogoo, a name purportedly derived from infantile babble which coincided with their breakthrough into the mainstream. Their significant opportunity materialized upon adding the magnetic frontman Limal to their configuration. Possessing a unique visual presentation and flair, Too Shy surged dramatically to the #1 spot on the UK singles chart and also scaled the Billboard Hot 100's top 5 in the US, instantly catapulting them to stardom. Yet, this peak success proved ephemeral. Internal disagreements precipitated Limal's exit later that very same year, and although the remaining members pressed forward with singles like Big Apple and The Lion's Mouth, they faced challenges in sustaining their chart presence. By the year 1985, Kajagoogoo had ceased operations. They briefly reconvened during the early 2000s, even issuing new musical material, but the initial spark never entirely rekindled. Sigue Sputnik. Conceived in 1982 by Tony James, formerly the bassist for Generation X, this band aimed to transcend mere musical performance. Their ambition was to orchestrate a full-blown spectacle. Their striking cyberpunk aesthetic, characterized by vivid neon palettes, metallic attire, and hairstyles defying gravity, formed an integral aspect of their allure, equal to their musical output. By merging components of glam rock, punk ethos, and electronic dance rhythms, they sought to encapsulate the futuristic, defiant spirit reminiscent of a cyberpunk dystopia. Their major breakthrough materialized in 1986 with the release of their inaugural single, Love Missile F1-11, expertly produced by the renowned Giorgio Moroder. The track's innovative fusion of electronic percussion, heavily distorted guitar sounds, and politically suggestive audio samples propelled it to number 3 on the UK singles chart. Nevertheless, despite this initial triumph, the band encountered difficulties in preserving their momentum. Their pronounced reliance on ostentatious marketing tactics such as auctioning advertising space directly on their album sleeves led some critics to question whether their focus skewed more towards image cultivation than artistic substance. As the late 1980s approached, Sigue Sputnik gradually receded from the mainstream music charts, yet their dedicated cult following persisted. Their discernible influence continues to echo in subsequent electronic and industrial rock movements, demonstrating they undeniably left an enduring imprint on music history. Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Is it conceivable that censorship could inadvertently amplify a song's popularity? This precise scenario unfolded for Frankie Goes to Hollywood with their contentious debut single, Relax. Originating in Liverpool in 1980, the group swiftly captured notice through their audacious sound and deliberately provocative visual presentation. Upon releasing Relax in 1983, its suggestive lyrical content and risque promotional materials ignited public indignation, culminating in the BBC imposing a ban on its radio and television broadcast. However, contrary to suppressing the song's trajectory, this prohibition generated the inverse outcome. Public fascination surged dramatically, propelling Relax straight to the number 1 position on the UK singles chart, staying there for 5 consecutive weeks and ultimately exceeding 2 million copies sold. Riding the wave of this unforeseen triumph, the band subsequently issued Two Tribes, an anti-war anthem that similarly claimed the top chart spot, soon followed by The Power of Love, a poignant ballad that secured their 3rd successive number 1 single. Their debut album, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, firmly established their significance within 1980s popular culture, expertly blending new wave sensibilities, synth-pop textures, and politically infused themes. By 1987, Holly Johnson had departed to embark on a solo career, precipitating the dissolution of Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Despite their relatively brief duration in the limelight, their lasting impact on both music and wider pop culture remains indisputable. Very few music videos can claim the kind of transformative cultural power wielded by a-ha's Take On Me. This Norwegian synth-pop trio, established in Oslo during 1982, featured Morten Harket providing lead vocals, Magne Furuholmen contributing on keyboards, and Paul Wachtore-Savoy playing guitar. Although the band had dedicated several years to honing their distinctive sound, their definitive breakthrough arrived in 1985, coinciding with the release of Take On Me. The song's phenomenal success was significantly fueled by its revolutionary music video, which ingeniously merged live-action footage with an extraordinary pencil sketch animation style, known as rotoscoping. This captivating visual narrative seized the imagination of audiences globally, driving the single to the pinnacle of the Billboard Hot 100 chart within the United States and firmly enshrining it as an enduring pop classic. The group's debut album, Hunting High and Low, further cemented their artistic standing, while a-ha encountered challenges sustaining their chart dominance in the U.S. During subsequent years, they continued to enjoy immense popularity throughout Europe, maintaining a consistent output of music across the 1990s and 2000s. Following a temporary pause starting in 2010, they reconvened in 2015, effectively demonstrating their resilience and persistent appeal to a dedicated global fan base. The Trash Can Sinatras. Hailing from Irvine, this Scottish indie pop collective took shape in 1986, initially cutting their teeth performing cover versions in neighborhood pubs. Their distinctive name allegedly originated from classroom activity where students improvised instruments, incorporating trash cans, which led to a witty comparison with Frank Sinatra. Gradually, they cultivated their unique songwriting voice, characterized by a fusion of bright, jangly guitar melodies and thoughtfully crafted, poetic lyrical content. Their significant advancement occurred with the unveiling of their 1990 debut album, Cake, which prominently featured the notable track, Obscurity Knocks. This particular song resonated with listeners on both sides of the Atlantic, garnering critical acclaim for the band. Nevertheless, despite this encouraging beginning, they faced obstacles in attaining broad commercial triumph. The 1990s witnessed the release of further albums, such as I've Seen Everything, 1993, and A Happy Pocket, 1996. Yet persistent financial constraints and significant shifts within the music industry landscape presented considerable challenges to sustaining their musical career. Despite these hardships, their devoted following remained unwavering, and the band pressed on, eventually releasing Weightlifting in 2004 and In the Music in 2009. Their steadfast commitment to their artistic craft ultimately solidified their position as cherished cult figures within the indie music sphere. The Replacements. Forged in Minneapolis during 1979, this group initially comprised Paul Westerberg handling vocals and guitar, Bob Stinson on guitar, Tommy Stinson playing bass, and Chris Mars keeping time on drums. While their origins were firmly planted in punk rock, their musical approach progressively broadened, integrating elements of rock, folk traditions, and pop sensibilities, which distinctly separated them from many contemporaries. By the middle of the 1980s, the Replacements had cultivated a notorious reputation for their unrestrained, often alcohol-infused live performances, frequently oscillating between moments of sheer musical genius and utter chaos. Their 1984 album, Let It Be, signaled a pivotal evolution, as Westerberg's burgeoning songwriting prowess prominently emerged on tracks like the iconic I Will Dare and the rawly emotional Unsatisfied. Although widely lauded by critics as a seminal work, the band persistently remained somewhat marginalized within the mainstream music establishment. Their inaugural major label effort, Tim, 1985, achieved recognition, yet escalating internal friction led to the departure of Bob Stinson in 1986. Despite garnering continued critical praise, subsequent albums, including Pleased to Meet Me, 1987, and Don't Tell a Soul, 1989, ultimately failed to catapult them into widespread popular stardom. By the time they issued All Shook Down in 1990, the band's internal cohesion was fraying, leading to their official disbandment in 1991. The Replacements endure as one of the most profoundly influential alternative rock bands of their specific era. The Men They Couldn't Hang. The Men They Couldn't Hang skillfully occupied a unique niche within the musical landscape by masterfully merging punk's unrefined vitality with the narrative depth characteristic of folk music traditions. Established in London during 1984, the band swiftly garnered recognition for their fervent, socially aware lyrics coupled with invigorating, memorable melodies. Their significant breakthrough arrived via their impassioned rendition of The Green Fields of France, an anti-war ballad originally penned by Eric Bogle. By injecting a potent dose of punk intensity into this deeply moving folk composition, they crafted a definitive signature track that struck a powerful chord with listeners. The founding lineup featured Stephen Cush, vocals, guitar, Philip Swill Odgers, vocals, guitar, John Odgers, drums, percussion, Paul Simmons, guitar, bouzouki, keyboards, and Shane Bradley, bass guitar. Their early work helped define the folk punk genre. The band consistently released albums throughout the latter part of the 1980s, presenting politically charged songs that tackled significant themes including warfare, class disparities, and broader social injustices. Although they never attained substantial mainstream chart success, the Men They Couldn't Hang cultivated an intensely loyal following, largely attributable to their tireless touring schedule and authentically raw sound. They initially disbanded in 1991, but subsequently reunited in 1996, demonstrating their persistent appeal. Their music has consistently served as a resonant voice for audiences drawn equally to punk's rebellious spirit and folk music's rich storytelling heritage. Rip Rig Plus Panic. Taking their name from a 1965 Roland Kirk jazz album, this band originated in Bristol in 1980, uniting a collective of exceptionally experimental musicians. The ensemble showcased Sean Oliver on bass, Mark Springer handling piano, saxophone, and vocal duties, Gareth Sager contributing guitar, saxophone, and keyboards, Bruce Smith playing drums and percussion, and the compelling Nene Cherry providing vocals, who would later achieve considerable solo stardom. Their inaugural 1981 album, God, instantly distinguished them with its untamed energy, non-traditional song arrangements, and uninhibited improvisational flair. Despite their audacious experimentation and positive reception from critics, widespread commercial popularity proved elusive for the group. By 1983, Rip Rig Plus Panic had ceased operations, although its members continued their musical pursuits actively. Nene Cherry embarked on a highly successful solo career, marked by hits like Buffalo Stance, while other members engaged in diverse musical endeavors. The Sound. The Sound stands as one of the post-punk era's most significantly underappreciated acts, consistently lauded by music critics, yet predominantly overlooked by the broader mainstream audience. Established in South London in 1979, the group emerged from the remnants of the Outsiders, a punk ensemble previously fronted by Adrian Borland. Featuring Borland on lead vocals and guitar, complemented by Graham Bailey, bass, Michael Dudley, drums, and Colvin Max Mayers, keyboards, the Sound cultivated a profoundly atmospheric and emotionally charged sonic identity that clearly distinguished them. Their 1980 debut album, Jeopardy, garnered widespread critical acclaim upon release, presenting dark, introspective lyrical themes and an urgent, visceral energy. However, despite the positive critical reception, the album failed to make a substantial impact commercially. The subsequent release, From the Lion's Mouth, 1981, demonstrated a more refined production quality and sophisticated poetic lyricism, yet it similarly struggled to connect with a larger listening public. Throughout the 1980s, they continued releasing several albums, but a persistent lack of mainstream acknowledgement, difficulties with record labels, and Adrian Borland's challenging, ongoing struggles with mental health inevitably took their toll. Tragically, in 1999, Borland died by suicide, leaving behind an enduring legacy of haunting, largely neglected post-punk brilliance. Vixen. Vixen decisively broke through barriers, emerging as one of the very few all-female glam metal bands to attain significant mainstream success during the vibrant 1980s rock scene. Originally founded in 1980 by guitarist Jan Kanemund in St. Paul, Minnesota, the band persistently vied for recognition within a musical genre overwhelmingly dominated by male artists. Their pivotal breakthrough arrived in 1988 with the release of their self-titled debut album, which yielded the powerful anthemic hits Edge of a Broken Heart and Crying. Both singles received extensive airplay on MTV and successfully climbed the Billboard Hot 100 chart, firmly establishing their position within rock music history. The iconic lineup consisted of Janet Gardner delivering lead vocals and playing rhythm guitar, Cher Ross anchoring the band on bass, and Roxy Petrucci driving the rhythm section on drums. Together, they formed a formidable group that emphatically demonstrated women could rock with the same intensity and skill as their male contemporaries. Their sophomore album, Rev It Up, 1990, sustained their momentum, peaking at No. 52 on the Billboard 200 chart. However, the rise of the grunge movement in the early 1990s precipitated a decline in glam metal's overall popularity, leading Vixen to disband in 1992. They later reunited during the late 1990s and again in the 2000s, although internal conflicts and various lineup changes hindered a complete resurgence. Lip Sync. Lip Sync achieved widespread recognition in 1980 courtesy of their international disco smash Funky Town, a composition that perfectly encapsulated the era's spirit through its irresistible rhythm and forward-thinking synthesizer textures. The project was initiated in Minneapolis during 1979 by producer, songwriter, and versatile instrumentalist Steven Greenberg, who conceived it as a studio-centric endeavor featuring a fluid roster of musicians. The group's most distinct voice belonged to Cynthia Johnson, contributing both star quality and vocal prowess to their distinctive sound. Their initial album, Mouth to Mouth, saw release in 1979, yet it was the single Funky Town that catapulted them to global stardom the subsequent year. The song utterly dominated music charts worldwide, achieving the #1 position in an impressive 28 countries, including the United States, where it reigned atop the Billboard Hot 100 for 4 weeks. It rapidly became a defining anthem of the disco movement, largely due to its insistent beat, distinctive robotic vocal treatments, and highly memorable lyrics expressing a yearning for urban excitement. Despite the extraordinary triumph of Funky Town, Lip Sync found it challenging to sustain that same pinnacle of popularity. Subsequent musical releases failed to generate comparable impact, and as the disco era gradually waned, so too did the group's prominence. By 1985, Lip Sync had officially disbanded, leaving behind the enduring legacy of a quintessential one-hit wonder that continues to connect with dance music enthusiasts globally. Funky Town persists as a timeless classic, frequently licensed for films, commercials, and remains a staple on dance floors. The Waitresses. The Waitresses skillfully carved out a distinctive presence within the early 1980s new wave movement, characterized by their sharp, clever lyrics, unconventional artistic style, and a subtly playful feminist perspective. Originating in Akron, Ohio, during 1978, the band was primarily the conceptual creation of guitarist and principal songwriter Chris Butler. He initially composed their breakthrough hit, I Know What Boys Like, as a satirical commentary on perceived male entitlement. The track, notably featuring Patty Donahue's distinctive deadpan vocal performance, initially became an underground favorite before eventually charting officially in 1982, peaking at number 62 on the Billboard Hot 100. Their debut album, Wasn't Tomorrow Wonderful, presented an endearingly quirky amalgamation of punk energy, jazz inflections, and pop melodicism, effectively distinguishing them from numerous other bands active during that period. The Waitresses also achieved notable success with Christmas Wrapping, a holiday tune that endures as a seasonal staple, celebrated for its witty narrative structure and undeniably catchy rhythmic groove. Despite this promising initial phase, the band encountered difficulties in maintaining forward momentum as internal band tensions began to exert a detrimental influence. Donahue temporarily departed the group, and with the exit of other key personnel, the Waitresses ultimately disbanded in 1984. Til Tuesday. Til Tuesday forcefully entered the music landscape in the mid-1980s, propelled by their iconic hit, Voices Carry, a memorably haunting synth-pop anthem that deeply connected with audiences and solidified itself as a defining track of the decade. Established in Boston during 1982, the band comprised Amy Mann, lead vocals, bass guitar, Robert Holmes, guitar, Joey Pesci, keyboards, and Michael Hausman, drums. Their unique, atmospheric sound, skillfully weaving together new wave sensibilities with rock undertones, rapidly distinguished them from their contemporaries. Released to the public in 1985, Voices Carry dramatically ascended to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Its success was significantly amplified by its visually arresting music video, which powerfully depicted the dynamics of an emotionally manipulative relationship. Drawing inspiration from Mann's own personal experiences, the song's palpable raw emotion and soaring, unforgettable chorus struck a profound chord with listeners worldwide. Despite achieving this significant breakthrough, Til Tuesday faced challenges in sustaining that initial level of commercial triumph. Their subsequent albums, Welcome Home, 1986, and Everything's Different Now, 1988, effectively showcased Mann's evolving, increasingly introspective songwriting talents, but did not generate comparable major hit singles. Ultimately, internal band tensions and shifts in creative direction led to their official disbandment in 1989. Johnny Hates Jazz. Johnny Hates Jazz surfaced in the mid-1980s, offering a refined pop aesthetic that expertly merged sophisticated melodic structures with thoughtful, introspective lyrical content. Formed in London during 1985, the core of the band consisted of Clark Datchler, handling vocals, keyboards, and primary songwriting duties, and Mike Nocito, contributing guitar, bass, and production expertise. Their distinctive name, originating from an inside joke concerning a friend's aversion to jazz music, helped them stand out within the densely populated pop music scene of the era. Their definitive breakthrough single, Shattered Dreams, issued in 1987, evolved into a truly international phenomenon. It climbed into the top 5 rankings in the United Kingdom, secured the number 2 spot in Japan, and reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart in the United States. The track's impeccably polished production values and its melancholic yet undeniably infectious melody firmly established it as a quintessential song representative of that specific period. Their debut album, Turn Back the Clock, 1988, further cemented their position within the late 80s pop landscape. However, precisely as the band was building significant momentum, Datchler departed in 1988 owing to internal disagreements, dealing a considerable setback to their ongoing trajectory. With Phil Thornalley assuming vocal duties, they released Tall Stories in 1991, but this effort failed to recapture their previous level of success. Johnny Hates Jazz left an indelible impression on 80s pop with their characteristically polished, highly radio-friendly sound. Visage. Established in London back in 1978, this group was prominently led by the charismatic and visually striking frontman Steve Strange, collaborating closely with Rusty Egan, drums, and Midge Ure, synthesizers guitar. They effectively brought together a potent combination of synthesizer-driven soundscapes and post-punk dynamism. Their 1980 self-titled debut album unveiled Fade to Gray to the world, a profoundly atmospheric composition that rapidly became an emblematic anthem of the early 1980s. Skillfully blending cool, detached synthesizers with evocative multilingual vocals and complemented by a chic, avant-garde music video, the song perfectly captured the zeitgeist of the burgeoning new romantic movement, reaching No. 8 in the UK. The band's distinct and influential visual identity, significantly shaped by Strange's prominent roles as both a fashion trendsetter and influential club promoter, cemented their status as pioneering figures within this cultural shift. Notwithstanding their initial triumphs, internal friction within the band, coupled with evolving musical preferences, ultimately led to Midge Ure's departure, significantly diminishing Visage's central creative force. Their subsequent album releases, The Anvil, 1982, and Beat Boy, 1984, failed to attain the same level of impact as their debut, and the band formally dissolved in 1985. Steve Strange later initiated various attempts at reviving the project prior to his passing in 2015, leaving behind a significant and enduring legacy within synth-pop history. Band of Susans. Band of Susans emerged as one of the most unique entities within the late 80s and early 90s alternative rock milieu, celebrated for their intricate, immersive guitar textures and avant-garde musical sensibilities. Conceptualized in New York City during 1986, the group was co-founded by Robert Poss, guitar, vocals, and Susan Stenger, bass vocals. Joining them were 3 additional guitarists, remarkably including 2 others also named Susan: Susan Tallman and Susan Lyle, with and Husak completing the initial formation on drums. Their debut extended play, Blessing and Curse, 1987, served as an introduction to their trademark sonic approach, a dense tapestry woven from feedback-rich guitars, starkly minimalist rhythmic foundations, and mesmerizingly repetitive musical phrases. This distinctive style underwent further development on their first full-length album, Hope Against Hope, 1988, which firmly established their reputation within the noise rock and experimental rock communities. Throughout their existence, the band experienced numerous personnel shifts. Despite receiving consistent critical commendation for their subsequent albums, including notable releases like Love Agenda, 1989, and The Word and the Flesh, 1991, widespread mainstream success remained perpetually out of reach. Band of Susans maintained their status as a cherished cult favorite throughout their decade-long operational span, before ultimately disbanding in 1996, bequeathing a lasting legacy characterized by complex, guitar-centric musical innovation. Which of these forgotten 80s bands do you remember? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive, check out more videos in this series. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to GoldDaysUSA for more hidden gems from the past. Thanks for watching.